We're going into grammar. So we did a lot of this. We got pretty far. We learned some cool things. I also found by chance a word aheu that means cattle. I meant to add it to this, but I forgot. Okay, so what were we talking about last time? We're talking about grammatical gender, and we're doing some transcriptions, which we can finish pretty quickly. And then we'll talk a bit about how this all works. And then we're going to have to look at some exceptions and some plurals. So I think this is where we ended up last time. I think we can probably bang this out pretty quickly. Do I have a volunteer who wants to give me the transcription?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, let's do it. You get as many as you want now, Mustafa, so you know, get after it.
Okay. Per Ma'at Aleph Ayin and sometimes T.
Sometimes T. I'll go ahead and put in, so yeah, T in the noun, because the noun is ma'at, that means truth. And then without a T, it's an adjective, it means true. So you can have the T if it's an adjective that modifies a feminine noun. You can not have the T if it's the adjective true that modifies a masculine noun. But then the noun itself, the concept of truth is always with the T. Yeah. And then I put in the Bohairic because the Bohairic, something happens in Saitic nouns that end in this long E. It ends up as epsilon. So it kind of gets rid of all the glottal stop and everything. But if you look at the Bohairic version, Mei, you can see that the glottal stop from the ayin is actually preserved there. So it's probably something like mua. And then Mei. Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Then Mer or Meru, that's where the Meroe names come from, I think.
Wait, you think? Why do you think?
Actually, I've written email to you about this.
Did I email you back?
Actually, yeah.
I did. Okay, well, that's good. That's a point for me right there. What did I say?
You just said I don't know.
Okay, I don't either at this point. If anybody has at any point emails me and doesn't get an email back, send me another email because I get a lot of emails and I don't always get back to them as quickly as I should.
I just question about I just question about Pemru Nemrui or Meruwe because of the harbors. I don't know. About it's you just said I don't know.
It's plausible. I mean, it's yeah. Merui would be the word. That would be the plural. I mean, it's spelled like this though. Huh. Okay. My answer to that question is that I don't know.
Okay, not problem.
I don't think it's a bad hypothesis by any means, though. I think it's entirely reasonable. We would need more evidence to decide.
Wiktionary has an etymology for Meroe, which traces it back to Meroitic.
To the language, to Meroitic language.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would guess too, honestly.
Okay.
Do you know, Rasmus, do you happen to know what it is, what the meaning is?
Apparently, it's just sort of the name for the nation itself. There's no other sort of meaning of the word given. But it has a descendant in Coptic. So in Coptic, apparently the nation was named Perue with a P for some reason.
That could be. I mean, that's a temple site if there ever was one. But then what would what god or goddess is
Where?
Where? Yeah.
Where? What
No,
did you do?
nothing comes to mind for me.
I
Anyway,
think maybe it is just evolved from Ray. Maybe because as
yeah,
I remember,
Ray.
Kerma, look, Kerma, what Gebel Barkal, one of the biggest temple of the Amun. Actually, it is the name is Second Karnak or something like that. The other name, as I remember.
And like, I mean, Amun and Ray are like very strongly syncretized, especially by the time you get to the 25th dynasty. I'm still reluctant to just automatically name something Ray just because it's associated with Amun. I would expect them to use the name Amun. And on things like the Pianki stela and stuff, they're clearly very focused on Amun specifically.
Yeah.
And not necessarily emphasizing his syncretized relationship with Ray. So I'm a little skeptical of that. Oh, this is neat. What a lovely watercolor.
Picture.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. I think we're gonna have to leave that there though, because there's obviously a lot to dig into. All right, what you got here?
Newt, and Yot, and Yot T. Nu.
Yeah.
Ra, R, and
hang on.
I.
What's going on with the spelling here? What we got?
Actually, it is a little bit confusing because there is a Atzi, there is something like weapon.
It's an
but
adds.
Actually, adds means mostly used for setup or something like that.
It can be setup also. Yeah.
Because of this little bit confusing.
Or anet, actually. The fun fact, the word in ancient Egyptian for fingernail is ina, and it also means adds. Because they're like little adds. Yeah, isn't that cute? I love that. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why because of why the adds there.
It's just phonetic. It's just the phonetic new. But like, why so many phonetic signs when we know exactly that this is just NW? Boy, I don't know. I wish I knew.
R, me too. R and Ain.
Yep. Ray. If anyone has ever been very rudely lectured by me about calling the name of this figure Ra, you now know why. His name is Ray. And don't even start with me about like the Amarna letters and like Ria or whatever. I don't want to hear it. His name's Ray. I'm the boss when it comes to that one.
I mostly said Ra because of probably my Semitic. I have said 2 years of in my high school Arabic mandatory lesson. Because of that, it's more like in the direct way of the Semitic, more like is
yeah, it is.
Because of that, ayin it means something like ra.
Yeah, I mean, you do have words with ayin where, so you have something that happens where if you have a high front vowel, like an E coupled with an ayin, you often get an A type sound. Because if you do A, that can sound like A. And maybe it was an I. The vowel inside the word was an I originally, and it became an A. So like, there's something to that. But his name's Ray.
Yeah, Ray.
Yeah.
Then rampant, or yeah, ren, n, p, p, and t.
Yeah. I wanted to double check that.
Some scholars say hesep or something like that. Mostly French.
Oh no,
Francophones.
they're right about that. So there's something called a hatsep that is the it was the occasion of the cattle census, and in the Old Kingdom it's believed to have occurred every 2 years, but they will still use they use a slight different writing with the zep sign, but it's a different word. And so a lot of the study of chronology goes into whether this is actually every 2 years or every year. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So if people are translating it that way, they're kind of leaning towards one hypothesis. But the word itself is just rompe, and that just means solar year. That's the basic word.
Yeah. Then hoim, what is hanu? Yeah, hanu.
Hanu becomes hoim somehow.
Hanu. Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants to figure out the derivation there, please share it with me because I don't know.
Hafau.
Yeah.
Pikachu H. F. Aleph. Wow.
Good.
Then H. Pikachu H and Janja.
Yep.
Het.
Oops.
You are jumping, yeah. Het.
Het.
Sep. Yeah. Saperu or Saper. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep those oo's. I like to write those oo's.
Yeah. Sope. Sepet or something like that.
Yeah, sepet's good.
Sahanu.
Mm-hmm.
Sahanu. Seshedet. These words I remember in the text inscription of Kamos or something like that.
Yeah.
Just say.
Maybe yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. Where it's like where it describes the women are hiding inside the fortress, and it's like the little mice. It describes them as like little mice peeking through the holes.
A lizard or something like that.
Was it penu? I thought the word was penu. Peen. I can't remember exactly, but I remember that scene because it's so adorable. It's like the story of like a conquest, and he describes the people hiding in the fortress like just like little mice poking out.
And a little bit weird because of the after the coming after this context, something like look Apophis, I just drink your wine, that trash that make from the my Asiatic something like Asiatic slaves.
Yeah, it's an interesting text. We should definitely read it at some point because it's really fun.
Yeah. Set.
That's good enough. You'll see people write offset or eset, but you know that's kind of up to you. I just write set because that's you know, set.
Session. Yeah, session. Yeah, or session. Yeah.
Can you tell me what modern name comes from this word?
What modern name?
Yeah, Aaron, what modern name?
My mother's name, Susan.
Susan, yeah. Susan means lily in ancient Egyptian.
It is really
it definitely really is. It definitely really is. Via
maybe
Hebrew.
Shoshank comes from this.
No, his name in It's a Libyan name, and his name is it's one way or the it's like Shishak is the Egyptian spelling, and Shoshenk is the Hebrew spelling, or vice versa. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Vice versa, yeah. Shishak in Hebrew.
Shishak in Hebrew,
Bible,
yeah. And then Shoshenk in Egyptian, but it's not actually Egyptian name, it's a Libyan name, so it can't be analyzed as Egyptian.
Yeah. Shot. Cats. Yeah. Gashu. Yeah. Ger. Geru. Yeah, ger.
Gereg.
Maybe in parentheses. Maybe, I don't know.
No, this is a triliteral. Gereg.
Okay.
And these are phonetic complements.
Okay. Then ta. In Coptic, mostly used for this, as I remember, kahi or something like that.
Kai. Yeah.
Yeah, kahi.
To shows up in a few compounds. It shows up in the names of some things, and I think it shows up in some old Coptic type context, or like Greek gloss type concepts. It's no longer the word, the most common word for land in Coptic, but it does survive often enough that we know that the word was to.
Okay. Chow. Yeah. Duat.
Duat, and in this case, it's actually, weirdly enough, it's spelled Daut, which seems there was some kind of metathesis here. So it was Duat, but then it swapped somehow and became Towe. You know how these things go.
The star most it has different combination. Saba.
Yeah, it could be Seba or Dua, and I think later on, if it's being used to spell a word that's now Daut, we could say that it's a multiliteral Dau also, right? Because the multiliteral values are inferred from the words, so it can be whatever we want it to be based on what word it's spelling.
Yeah. Then Depet. Demi. DM. Yeah.
It's got a T on it.
Plus D. Yeah. Jeru. Jeret.
Or you can even write Deret in late Egyptian because it has already changed into Deret. But yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you, Mustafa. That was excellently quick. Okay, so last time I put a little kind of a quiz in here where I asked you to try to guess what marks the feminine. I think I broke my own game by telling you beforehand, but this is basically it. So feminine nouns are marked with the final T, which corresponds to a final vowel in Coptic, either the epsilon or the iota in some dialects. So Bohairic and Fayumic, the lower Egyptian dialects use E or iota, however it's pronounced, and the upper Egyptian dialects use which was probably pronounced something like ah. So yeah, that's just a dialectal variation, but it is useful to think of the T as being associated with the feminine, but it is important also to recognize that this sound was not pronounced when it occurred at the end of words. And this actually does end up being important when reading real text because it can kind of lead you astray. If you see a T, especially at the end of a word, here's a great one, sope. you cannot automatically assume that that T is being pronounced. And in fact, you're probably better off assuming that it isn't being pronounced. It's preserved. It has protected the final vowel. So when you think about the way that Egyptian changed over time, you can kind of imagine the sort of erosion process happening to the ends of words. So if there's a final T in the root of the word, that's going to protect this final vowel. If there's not a final T, let me see if I can find an example. Oh, here's a great one. We have hefau. Obviously, this ended in one or more vowel sounds, and we just end up with hof because everything else that came after it has been eroded by time. So the T protects the final vowel, and then as a result, the final vowel becomes the marker of the feminine. So if we're vocalizing Late Egyptian, this process had already happened by Middle Egyptian. By the time we get to Late Egyptian, these final T's are not being pronounced. They're only being written, and then they're being written as a sort of graphical representation of the feminine, not necessarily to be read aloud. That's what all of this is about. There's a typo there. Let's fix that. Okay. Oh, I said this. Good. Hey, look at me. Loss of final T in pronunciation had already happened during the Middle Kingdom. This is why some late Egyptian words that were feminine grammatically and markedly feminine in pronunciation were not written with a T. So if you think about the way the hieroglyphic script works, they only mark the vowels. Okay, what happens when you have a word that ends in a vowel with no final consonant? Do you write the T or not? Well, a lot of times they do write the T because they know that it's a feminine word, even though that T was never pronounced. Like, let's say it's a neologism. It's a word that just first came to exist during Late Egyptian, but it is a feminine word. They might put the T on there and they might not. So it's a little tricky. So in the text that we're going to be reading, we have an example like this. The word singer, it has the female classifier, and she's named in the story. We know that this character is female, but the word for singer is never markedly feminine with the T. It just has a classifier, no T. Oh, I left this. Oh, it's coming soon. Okay, coming soon. So yeah, so we can imagine there were cases where there were words that were kind of unisex, where they didn't have to be markedly feminine. The word singer might be one of them. We do the same thing in English, where we refer to female actors as just actor. You don't have to say actress. You can choose to say actor, or you can choose to say actress if you're specifically marking the fact that it's feminine. And this is actually a really good example because, so, you know, especially in our world today, we're thinking all the time about, you know, the way language encodes patriarchal systems and gender disparities and all of these things. And we can kind of, without necessarily meaning to, we can bring that to Egyptian. The way Egyptian worked, for one thing, it was a very male-dominated society, but at the same time, the language itself treated the masculine as the unmarked nominal form. So the masculine singular is the one that has nothing special added to it. Feminine,
because it is nothing special. It has nothing special, and because of T, I suppose it is different from the commoner. Yeah.
Yeah, and it, you know, it is still problematic. This idea of markedness there's a lot to be said about that. You know, there's a phenomenon that happens in literature where if you're writing a character, if that character is white, you don't really need to describe their skin color. But if that character is a person of color in any way, the author is going to explicitly state that person's skin color. Why is that? Well, because we as a society have a sort of inherent bias that says that that white is the default and that anything else needs to be specially marked.
Yeah, I don't really know that part because it is all Greek to me at the side of the language, and because of there is actually no grammatical gender in Turkish and mostly culture. Yeah.
Yeah, Turkish is kind of unique in that regard. I think there's an awful lot to be said about this. There's a lot to be said about markedness, whether it's with regard to sex or to race or any of these things, and kind of what it means when a society chooses a default, and kind of what that says about how it looks at different groups of people. I think that's something that we should be conscious of, that the sort of the implicit bias that comes with that is worth paying attention to and being conscious
Probably
of.
It also matters of, can you hear me?
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah. I mean, it kind of depends of where the story is taking place. I mean, I speak fluently Japanese. I read a lot of Japanese stuff. So by default, they will consider the characters as Asian.
Yeah.
They don't need to precise it because like that's their default system, because that's what's most common in their countries. So I guess, well, for European countries, it's getting a bit tricky now because there's a lot of different kind of people, but that kind of depends on the time too.
Yeah.
Like, that's complicated anyway.
It's complicated. It's especially complicated. I mean, I think it's Aurora, are you coming from France?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's becoming, because of the huge number of people who come from former French colonies in North Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
You have this in the United States. We have a case where half of the people you meet on a daily basis are not white, and yet we still write literature where white is the default. And
yeah,
there's a question to be asked there, and I think it should be asked.
surely. And it's like we're getting more or less the same problem in France too. Like most people will write about white people when, well, now this, at least in some cities, about half of the population is non-white.
Not white, yeah. Aurelio, you had something to add.
Yeah, I don't want to take it too far, but I'm wondering if we're not interpreting a bit too much into the language if we say that T in Semitic languages is marked and otherwise it's unmarked. There's a lot of, I mean, basically tens of thousands of years of erosion before that we don't see. So we're looking at a snapshot in time where it looks like male nouns don't have an extension and female nouns have. But who knows what was 3,000 years before that or 5,000 years before that?
They once had an "u" ending, actually. We do know that they were once marked.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
With the inferred W and whatnot. Yeah, I'm thinking, for example, in Spanish right now, right? Aurelia and Aurelio, if I use my own name. You would say basically they're on equal footing there because it's just a change of vowel. So if I take the same game, I don't know. I'm just skeptical. I think we may be applying a very modern sensitivity there to the presence of the final T or not.
That's actually, that leads perfectly into the next thing I was going to say. So, I want to say that part because I want to make it clear that we're not, like, I have no desire to ignore the importance of this issue, but at the same time, in studying Egyptian, we're going to kind of take it as it is. And Egyptian treats the masculine as unmarked and treats the feminine as marked. And I think, sort of putting aside these totally important social issues that we're dealing with, when we study Egyptian, we probably shouldn't bring those things into questioning like markedness in Egyptian nouns. Like we should probably just take them as they are. And I want to acknowledge it because I want to make it clear that I'm not ignoring those issues, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily make sense to impose them on a language that's 3,000 years in the
Works
past.
for history too. I mean, you just take it as it was. And when whatever we think about that does not really matter. It happened.
Yeah.
It's all about actually.
For Latinos and Latinas. I mean, most Spanish speakers I know violently object to that and
the Latinx thing. I know.
Has nothing to do with Spanish.
Every actual Latino person I've ever heard speak about that thinks it's totally ridiculous to write Latinx. But good luck telling that to a group of activist college students. I mean, I don't want to be the one to say it. That's for sure. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
all of that is to say that I fully believe that these issues are quite important, but in the case of Egyptian, it doesn't really do any good. We should just take it as it is. The masculine is unmarked.
Yeah,
and the
because
feminine
it is language
generally
and use in language.
Yeah. I do think somebody could get a lot of mileage out of kind of questioning this narrative of ancient Egypt being sort of especially egalitarian, and then look at things like language as a way of exploring that question. I think that could be quite valuable, but that's not what we're here to do right now. But if it is something you're interested in, I'll happily talk to you about it. I think it's quite interesting. Anyway, so we have this marker, right? The final T that marks the feminine as a rule, with some exceptions. So we have a case like this. Yeah, Mustafa got it right away. We have Cleopatra. Her name is actually written with a final T that never existed in Greek, right? This is unetymological, but they put it on there because, well, because she's a woman, because her name ends in a final vowel, which in Egyptian words means that there's usually a T there in writing. So it's kind of a back formation, right? They're adding the T where it's unetymological because they've kind of, this rule has been established in this way. And then there's another caveat, which is that T is not, the feminine ending is not the only use of the consonant T in Egyptian, obviously. There are quite a few cases of masculine nouns that end in T because it's part of the word's root. And in those cases, you kind of just have to be aware of them as exceptions. So for instance, the word wood, het, becomes she in Coptic. In both late Egyptian and in Coptic, it looks markedly feminine, but it is actually masculine. So that's kind of one of the exceptions that you have to learn. All of the other exceptions are, they're not very obviously marked, but they are here. So they're in this list. There's a few others. Let me see if I can find one really quick without wasting too much time searching around for this. I know there are some others. Oh, this is a good one. It's feminine in late Egyptian, masculine in Coptic. It's actually lost that. It should be shoshte if it followed the exact path that other words do. But for whatever reason, its gender was reinterpreted and it lost that final E. I'm sure there are a few others. And if we were to look through an Egyptian dictionary, we could find quite a few of them, masculine words that end in T that look formally feminine but are not. So that's just, a minor caveat to be aware of. It's such a minor caveat that if you see a T, you can assume it's feminine safely, and you'll be right so often that you don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, so that's gender. And I think we've pretty well covered gender. I hope. We talked a lot about it. And I think I said some useful, fun, and exciting things.
Yeah.
So number. So Egyptian nouns basically have gender and number. If you're a language nerd like me and you were hoping for some kind of case system, well, you're either going to be disappointed or it is going to fire your imagination and you are going to go fruitlessly searching for evidence of a case system in Old Egyptian, as so many before you have done. I advise against it because it doesn't seem to be there. So really just gender and number. And really there are three forms of Egyptian nouns. There is the masculine singular, feminine singular, and the plural. There's not really a masculine and feminine plural. If you studied Middle Egyptian, you're squirming in your chair right now because there is a feminine and masculine plural. Late Egyptian, they're gone. There's just one plural, which is, I think, quite convenient. Anyway, okay, so late Egyptian has two numbers, singular and plural. Earlier in the history of the Egyptian language, there was also a dual form. So if you've never seen a dual form, it's basically you can have one thing, you can have two things, or you can have multiple things. So singular, dual, and plural. The dual form actually does survive in a few places. I mention it here, fell out of use by the time of late Egyptian, only scattered remnants of it survive as vestigial features in the language we are studying. So one example might be the word pahu. So if you ever see the preposition in Coptic epahu, that means backwards, but
Oui.
literally it means toward the buttocks, and pahu is actually a dual form that means buttocks because there are two of them. And I think that's cute and easy to remember. Also, the word toi that means sandals is a fossilized dual. And you'll see these, you might encounter fossilized duals in Coptic or in Late Egyptian. They'll be treated as either singular or plural, but formally they have the dual ending because they came in pairs. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, but for our purposes, we really only have singular and plural. Egyptian plurals were always marked graphically with the addition of the plural classifier. This is actually supposed to be small caps, but I can't figure out how to do small caps in Google Docs. Plural classifier at the end of a word, these three little ticks. And now this is where it gets fun. It is often unclear how pluralization was marked in pronunciation, so we will generally not transcribe or vocalize this distinction in any way. That's the part that people who have really studied Middle Egyptian are probably like, you know, digging around for their pitchforks and lighting torches right now. Because if you've ever studied Middle Egyptian, you know that if you want to make a noun a plural, you put a W on the end. That is, that's a morphology that's been inferred from the examples where we can see that happening, but it is very, very unclear whether that was a general rule. So it is not at all clear that Egyptian regularly formed plurals that way. The one thing we can say that Egyptian does to form plurals is to put this little unvocalized hieroglyph at the end of the word. So yeah, so we are not going to transcribe it, but we will see some examples. So there are some notable exceptions to this rule. Some nouns retain distinct plural forms in Late Egyptian, most of which survived into Coptic. So this is useful. We actually get some really cool phonetic information from this. In such cases, not only is the written Egyptian word different in such a way that affects the transcription, but the addition of Coptic provides a rare window into Egyptian morphology. So let's look at the following examples, see whether you can determine how Egyptian generally marks plurality of nouns. So I've already put some of these in here. So we've got eat for yot, meaning father. Anyone want to give me the transcription of the plural, fathers?
Fathers. Actually, itiu, yoti, yot, and u.
Yod, T, I'm gonna do yod, yod. And
Yeah.
where's that? And you want me to write this? You're telling me to write this. Why?
Yeah, because father is masculine, and the masculine plural form is u. Then
No,
it's
no. That this is where I'm like, this is where I'm trying to like totally destroy your worldview. No, I'm going to transcribe it like that. There is no W in this word. There never was, or there might have been at some point, but there's no evidence that there ever was. And the Coptic actually shows us that it does not have a W. It's just
okay.
ET. It is possible that there was once a W that through normal sound change changed into a yod type sound. Entirely possible. I don't know. But all the evidence we have says that the plural of the word father is ET. And then, in fact, if we look at the singular and plural that survive into Coptic, it's yot and yoda. No evidence of a W whatsoever. There are cases where there is evidence of a W.
Okay,
The key thing I want to show you is that not always. There's even in cases where we have distinct plural forms, there's no W there. So yeah. Okay. And then how about this one? So we had Nesut for king and
Nesuti.
Nesuti. Yeah, I don't know why my font is just being like totally uncooperative. I'm just going to try to paste this through all of these and see if it will actually stick. Aha, okay, yeah, Nesuti. That's what's written.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have Necher. And then what's the plural of Necher?
Necheru.
You sure about that?
Or Necheri.
You sure about that?
Yes, but I don't know.
It's just Necher. And we can actually see from the consonantal root of the Coptic, it's nute and inter.
According to mostly grammar, Middle Egyptian grammar books, it is natural.
I know,
But
where are they getting that W from? They're generalizing, and you will see a few examples in a minute to show why you might make that generalization. But I am going to advise against it because one of the points of this class is trying to get at the real spoken language of Egyptian, which means not imposing our own ideas of how it was supposed to sound onto the language. So I'm going to transcribe this nature. And you could even do, I think Alan does this. This is how Alan transcribes it now. So he and I have been talking about this for years, and both with the same amount of like unwarranted vehemence, like annoyance at this W, that we don't have a good, we really don't have good evidence for this W. Egyptologists just decided to put a W, and now we just assumed that that's how the language works, and like the evidence is not there. It just isn't there. Aurelio, you had a hand up.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself first. I mean, in terms of the consonant structure, first of all, fully agree. Why write a W if there's no attestation for it? The Coptic word in my mind does suggest that there was something following the R to protect the R.
There must have been a vowel.
There must have been a vowel. So enchere is as far as I would go. So
I could actually go, I could go even farther than that. Let's go even farther than that. So we've got, from past examples of this, we have reconstructed, gosh, look at that stupid N. Who writes N like that? I wrote a Coptic N for some reason. So we have reconstructed nute.
It's nachar, yeah.
Nachar, okay. And then.
Or nata.
Oh yeah, natar, sorry. And then you know, going further back, there must have been this this palatal T. I can't remember why, but it's there, whatever. Okay, so we have this natar. And then for the feminine, which isn't actually listed here, I should have put it in here. We have intore, and so that gives us nacharat, with the stress here, and then this is syncopated, etc. We get intore, and then, you know, etc. You got this part already. So what do we get for inter?
Natur, I guess. That could be it could be a yub sound.
Yeah, natur, and then some kind of short vowel that protects that final R from being lost. Yeah, and then, so this U vowel in open syllable gives us that eta. The syllabic end, so like the syncopation of this vowel that makes this sort of syllabic or puts a short vowel in front or whatever, that's all good. You know, we don't have to know exactly because it's not that important. And then from that, we could actually do something like this, and then through metathesis, that's how we get the U vowel, where we get the eta in the final form. So
actually,
that actually gives us a good reason to say this, except this vowel is not a W consonant.
Yeah.
You don't get eta from the W consonant. You get it from an U type vowel, and you know there's some flexibility there, but we could actually use this example in favor of an argument for necheru. We could if we wanted to. The reason that I don't do that is because I feel like we're approaching the evidence in the opposite direction. We're seeking an explanation that supports our prior conclusion, and instead of letting the evidence speak for itself. I like this because that lets the evidence speak for itself. And if this is the case, well, so be it. We'll eventually, you know, once we gather enough evidence, we'll decide that. But I don't want to decide it just yet. There are several papers written about the sort of broken plural aspect of Coptic and how it could have derived from a consistent morphology. I find them, I think I can safely say I've read every single one of them, and the feeling I came away from it was exactly like the Cartesian proof of the existence of God. It's like, might be exactly correct. I mean, it's perfectly logical, but it's really clear that he started from a conclusion and then fit the evidence to it. And so what we're trying to do in this class is stick to the evidence and then derive our conclusions from it.
Maybe we can just write into the parentheses. Because
like
there is
this?
not. Yeah. I mean, W, yeah.
I'm still reluctant to even do that because I don't want to assume the W. Because so here's the problem. If we assume a W, we are inevitably, because historical linguistics allows for so much lateral thinking and speculation, we will inevitably prove that supposition to ourselves if we start from it.
Okay.
In what we should do instead is start with what we know and let whatever the correct answer is emerge naturally from the evidence. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, I get it. The main meanings of the discussion, I get it, but I just I mostly learn from the books like Alan Gardner because of the knowledge of my self-learning, self-learning knowledge. That's where I come from.
Think about it this way: a Zen master unlearns one thing every day. So this is your moment of Zen. You're unlearning the W today.
Yes, my sensei.
Rasmus, did you have something to add?
Perhaps I misunderstood. Why is the 3 you have here, is that supposed to be an ein?
No, it represents the presence of the classifier.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
sure.
it's just a way of saying that's all the evidence we have right now.
Yeah.
There's an aleph too.
I just think, that's the aleph.
Yeah.
That was my question too about that.
Well, geez, you guys, I mean, you can't please everyone. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, the aleph makes some sense to me because it sometimes really seems to be a vowel marker. So, but no, I see. That's just substituting one weak consonant for another one.
Maybe you.
Is Alan then putting in a 3 for every?
It is
so
like
every time that's used.
It better be.
It look like Phoenician M.
Don't even start with me. He better be, because I argued with him about this for like 10 years. And I was so pleased when he finally agreed that we should just be putting in, like, the classifier adds meaning. It needs to be included in the transcription. But to just say that this means W, we really don't have solid evidence that this means W. We really don't. There are no cases where it is used to mark a phonetic W, none. So to take this and say that it's W, we're breaking all our rules about how we transcribe Egyptian when we do that.
I have a suggestion about this topic.
Okay.
Maybe we can, if nature become plural, we can just put ein symbol between chi and r.
The ein symbol. Why would we put the ein symbol? You mean here?
Yeah.
Like this?
Much more logical than this Coptic version.
We put a U.
Because the eta means actually something like ein.
No, eta does not mean ein.
similar. Yeah. Actually.
Oh yeah, we have Unicode. What am I even thinking? Whoever, I didn't see who wrote that in the chat. I looked at it too quickly, but yeah, that's the answer. This is what we should be writing.
Yep.
Make good experiences there with Chinese or Japanese number 3, which fits a little bit better on the line.
You know what else looks like that? The number 3. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but it's this.
It is, of course. Yeah, it's 3 strokes.
Yeah.
It's like
And
2 is
two.
2 strokes.
2. Yeah. I think that's fun. I highly enjoy that. Food for thought. If I have any people here who are like mathematically or engineering inclined, why does it end up looking like that? There's something, there's physics here. There's physical, oh no, we're getting into dangerous waters. Yeah, we are. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna do that. I like this. This is Z3A or something? What is this sign? Z3.
Then we can just
Z3A.
we can just write R8, 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 and G7 and Z3.
Wait, R8? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, we can. We very well could. I mean, the whole point of transliteration is, with the small, wait, Rasmus, how did you put the small caps in Unicode?
Those are separate Unicode characters.
How do you type them?
I don't, I copy them.
Ah. I got to make a small caps keyboard. I need small caps so bad. Okay. All right. I wonder if such a thing exists. I'm going to look later. Okay, let's do the rest of these. Let's hammer out the rest of these transcriptions. Mustafa, what you got?
I got how. I've done so much, but I can't more. Haru. Heru.
Yeah, and there's a W.
Yeah.
There's a real plural W.
And when you put in the 3 there, because it means something, like you said.
Yeah, no, you're right. Should be there.
Right.
Let's do Z3A.
I mean, the W doesn't feel like a plural because it's in the singular in that case. So it's not like the W is marking the singular as a plural in the case of days. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
It's more like the R. It's marking
Yeah.
the plural here.
Yeah. It is. I mean, yeah.
that's similar too.
If we wanted to cherry pick examples, and which is basically how the W got the plural status in the first place, we could just as easily choose this one and say that R marks the plural.
But where's the R coming from?
It is coming from, well, you might be able to tell me what's the Middle Egyptian version of this word.
Oh. Haru.
Yeah.
Heru.
So it must have been, it was syllable final and got lost, turned into a glottal stop. But then in the plural, the syllable structure was different, so it got preserved.
Ah, makes sense.
Yeah. And then one more. We have one last little
Okay.
little plural guide to do. This one works.
Senu.
Oops. Wait, how did I even do that?
That's all.
I was trying to switch to the other keyboard. Where are we? Here. Egyptian keyboard. I'm totally going to make this a thing where we just put in the plural marker. That's such a simple solution to this problem. Beautiful.
You could
Okay.
just put a 3 too, and then you wouldn't have to switch keyboards.
Yeah, I thought
think
people
you
didn't
get
like
into
my
trouble.
3.
I think you get into trouble with the 3 because some people their minds go straight to Aleph because of the superficial resemblance.
What if we did like a
And some people use threes for alepphs.
They
Also.
do,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we have to do this. I
You
think
could
this is
copy and paste it and have it available at all times when you're writing it to make it quicker, so you don't have to switch.
I also really like this. Oh wait, I failed to
Or
copy.
just integrate your main keyboard from ukulele to the Z3 in your keyboard.
Yeah, I definitely thought about that too. Just adding it to the transliteration. Oops, sorry. Just adding it to the transliteration keyboard. That's not a bad idea. Just add the plural marker to the transliteration keyboard.
You do
Trying to
3
copy
capital
Rasmus's.
I's like Roman numerals.
Does this look nice? I kind of like this.
Mm. Ooh. Ooh.
Does the
You need a you
And
need
does the
do
three
it,
marks always mean plural then?
then
Does
do
what?
it with superscript.
Okay, my question is, does the 3 marks always indicate a plural? For you
No.
to be able to put plural down then.
Yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't. The 3 marks can also be collective nouns, like the word sand, for example, is singular, but might have 3 marks because it's kind of a collective. Yeah, I think it has to be this. And you know what? I think this is fine. I think this works. What about the flat? Do the flat ones look better? What do we think? Flat ones or vertical ones? I like vertical ones.
It is so big and so unfit with the Latin transliteration. Maybe we should make a much more small version of it to fit the Latin transliteration.
Why does it keep jumping up there? Okay, let's put it to a vote. I'm going to look at your faces. All in favor of the horizontal vertical strokes, raise your hand. Not seeing a lot of.
You mean the ones we're seeing right now?
The ones we're seeing right now. Yeah, all in favor of the ones we're seeing right now. 1, 2, 3.
Actually, yeah.
Okay, I've got 3 votes for those. And all in favor of the, let me see if I can actually type them, of these ones. Oh, we could also do those ones. Okay, all in favor of these ones, the taller ones, raise your hand.
I like it because it's kind of like a 3.
Okay, well, it's evenly tied, which means I get to decide. I like the tall ones.
I like the superscript plural abbreviation.
That one's no good at all. It's too easy to miss, I think.
I don't know. The mostly cuneiform studies work run like this, like I said, something superscript when it comes to.
Yeah,
actually,
in classifier studies too, actually. In classifier studies, it's always small caps inside square brackets.
Yeah, you can delete maybe super brackets.
Do I even need the brackets? Let's try another one.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
And now I really can't decide. Let's leave it like
Much
this.
more scientific. Yeah, it is looking more scientific. Other than the other suggestions.
Okay, that's not a selling point for me, Mustafa. I hate to break it to you.
Okay, no problem.
All right, I'm gonna leave the three of them like this, and then the next time we meet, we're gonna look at them again, and I'm gonna make a poll, and we're gonna decide. I'm also gonna write some more stuff for us to read next time, because I didn't finish writing it.
I mean, we strategically ended on the last line. Amazing.
I mean, you can call it strategic if you want to give me that much credit. I appreciate it. Okay, not taller. Oh, horizontal ones preserve the original look. I mean, there are excellent arguments in favor of all. I'm thinking about if this is in a typeset line, it's really going to screw up the typesetting because then you're spacing between lines of text. Oh wait, I stopped sharing. I'm sorry. If it's the vertical one, it's going to really screw up your typesetting. The spacing between the lines is going to be weirdly big whenever a word like that is in it.
Unless there's some way to collapse it so it's no taller than like the T.
Yeah.
But then you'd have to create that, probably.
I like this one. I like this one. I'm leaning towards one of these two. I think I prefer this one though. I don't know. Okay, we're going to come back to it next time. Until then, everybody have a great week. I'll see y'all tomorrow at office hours. And
See you tomorrow.
And I won't see you next Wednesday at office hours because I still don't know what's happening with my schedule, but we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good night, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.